Welcome, dear listeners, to the very first episode of Unveil the Future Season 3 podcast. I'm your host, Dick Wood, Senior Marketing and Communication Specialist at VinFuture Foundation, and it is my pleasure to begin this new season with you. Over the last 2 seasons, Unveil the Future has brought together remarkable scientists, innovators, and visionaries to share how their work is shaping a better future. In Season 3, we continue that journey with the same guiding mission at the heart of VinFuture Prize, Science for Humanity. In a world where scientific breakthroughs are rapidly reshaping societies, the real question is not only what we innovate, but also how we ensure that these innovations reach and benefit communities everywhere. And to open this new season, we are honored to welcome someone who has dedicated her career to making exactly that happen. Dr. Jayshree Seth, corporate scientist at 3M, a global science and innovation company known for creating practical solutions that improve daily life, from healthcare to sustainable technologies. Dr. Seth is also the company's first ever chief science advocate with more than 80 patents to her name. She was the very first female engineer inducted into 3M prestigious Culture Society, and she is a powerful voice for inclusivity and leadership in STEAM. This year, she also joined the VinFuture Prize pre-screening committee for the 2025 season, bringing her scientific expertise and her global perspective to its significant mission. Her commitment to inclusive, impactful innovation speaks directly to the ethos of Science for Humanity. Dr. Seth, first of all, congratulations on your appointment as a distinguished member of the VinFuture Prize pre-screening committee. Can you share with us what motivated you to take on this role and how it connects with your broader mission as a scientist, innovator, and advocate for the societal role of science?
Well, thank you so much. I was truly honored when I was approached to participate on the VinFuture Prize pre-screening committee. It's primarily because the mission actually resonates deeply with my own professional ethos, if you will. I'm committed to innovation that creates tangible, positive impact on people's lives, whether it's my own work in developing, environmentally friendly products at 3M, fasteners that keep diapers on wiggly babies, or advocacy for making science more accessible and appreciated in everyday life. I have consistently focused on the real-world application and the human benefits of scientific advancement. And the VinFuture Prize shares this focus, recognizing breakthrough research, technological innovation that create meaningful change in people's everyday lives. And I have to say that the emphasis the prize has on the real-world impact and on the global perspective, global challenges solved, contributing to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, interdisciplinary approaches, special categories for innovators from developing countries, category for women innovators. All of this reflect this shared commitment to recognizing excellence from a multitude of perspectives, and that aligns closely with my background, my work, and even my role at 3M as Chief Science Advocate. So this is really a global platform to advance these objectives, to raise awareness of impactful innovations, break down geographical and disciplinary barriers, and champion science and the fact that it can address real world challenges. So it's perfect. So it's been a great experience to be on the committee, and I'm really looking forward to actually visiting Vietnam this December.
Thank you, Dr. Seth, for sharing such a thoughtful reflection on how the mission of VinFuture Prize resonates with your own journey. It is truly inspiring to hear how you connect innovation to real-world impact. And of course, we are very much looking forward to welcoming you to Vietnam this December. Building on what you've shared, I'd like to turn to your role within the pre-screening committee itself. As a member of this committee, how do you view the prize approach to identifying and honoring scientific achievements with significant global impact? And what unique perspectives do you hope to bring in order to spotlight interdisciplinary innovations with the greatest potential for the societal benefit?
Well, as you know, the VinFuture Prize evaluates, nomination based on three core criteria, let's say. It's the scientific and technological advancement, it's the meaningful change in people's lives, the scale of impact, sustainability. And these criteria align closely, as I mentioned, with my own values, the holistic vision, and the approach to innovation. And at 3M, we are focusing on developing technologies with practical application that improve people's lives. So, in my role as corporate scientist, it gives insight into the process of translating discoveries into practical innovation. And I think this perspective is particularly relevant that I can bring to the prize's goal of I think they say bridging the gap between research and reality. And I have to say, in addition to that, my global background and experience, I grew up in India, I lived in Europe, and building my career in the United States, it gives me this multicultural lens, if you will, through which I can look at innovations from multiple contexts. And I think this is valuable for assessing nominations and understanding how the innovations might address needs in completely different, let's say, cultural and economic contexts. There's one more thing that is important, which is the state of science research that 3M does, which is an initiative to understand public perception of science. And that has been really eye-opening for me, even. And that understanding of how science is perceived and valued by different communities can also help inform my assessment of how effectively innovations communicate their impact to broader audiences. Um, you know, the last piece I would say is I like to integrate humanities into this. And I actually say the real shtick is STEM. STEM is science, humanities, technology, engineering, and math. And this is the whole idea of recognizing and valuing integration with innovation, with insights from multiple discipline. And that also aligns completely with the VinFuture's Prize, which involves interdisciplinary approaches. So I extend it even to understanding of the human context there. So I think, I hope that my background, my roles, my values allow me to contribute to the evaluation process, and particularly for innovations that create, meaningful, positive change in people's everyday lives.
It is very inspiring to hear how your expertise, global perspectives, and your focus on connecting science and humanities all shape the way you think about innovation. We have just explored your role with the VinFuture Prize, and now I would like to move to your journey of research and leadership in STEAM. With more than 80 patents and induction into 3M's prestigious Culture Society, your career spans significant contribution to applied research. Could you share one or two inventions that for you best demonstrate how scientific rigor, practical utility, and societal benefit can come together?
Wow, that's a great question. I have worked on a lot of stuff because I like to chase problems to solve. And I've worked on fasteners, like I said, that keep diapers on wiggly babies. I work on composites that are used to make golf clubs and sporting equipment. I've worked on cosmetics, skincare. I worked on tapes that go into planes, trains, automobiles, and adhesives for phones and mobile devices. I worked on organic materials, inorganic materials, bio-based materials, and more. So each patent and project has provided, unique learning, and it really makes it difficult to showcase one. And really, what is really good about this is that people I worked with and the problems we solved together. That's what I remember. So if I was to give, let's say, one example, I would say the technical effort to completely eliminate the use of solvents in making of packaging tape. And this literally allowed the entire production to become substantially solvent free. This innovation really exemplified that integration of scientific rigor, the technological utility, and the positive societal impact. From a scientific perspective, you have to develop adhesives and release combinations that perform without solvents, And that requires understanding of polymer chemistry, material science. And I'm not an expert in that, but we have at 3M experts in that area. So it's about collaborating with them with that end goal in mind. The technological utility is that, it needs to be successfully implemented at production scale. It's easy sometimes to do experiments in the lab, but you really have to scale it. And that's where a lot of difficulty actually comes in. So you have to work with the production teams, the factory, the manufacturing folks to demonstrate that it's not just theoretically sound, but practically viable. And then when that comes together and you are able to do this, the societal impact is substantial because eliminating solvents means we have reduced volatile organic compound emissions. And so it improves worker safety by reducing exposure to, potentially harmful chemicals. It decreases the environmental footprint of the manufacturing process. And in fact, for that reason, we earn many internal and external awards for this, and it helps the company achieve sustainability goals. And so I think a lot of my work has actually been towards improving the sustainability of our products, resource efficiency, waste reduction, and then also economic benefit throughout the value chain. So I think tape is the example that people can relate to. We all, tape boxes and things like that. And now the kind of out of box thinking that was needed to get that done.
What an impressive example. The story of creating solvent-free packaging tape really captures how innovation can move from the lab to large-scale production while delivering real environmental and social benefits. It shows the kind of practical impact that science can have when paired with vision and collaboration. Along these achievements, you also serve as 3M first Chief Science Advocate. In this role, you have led the State of Science Index, a global study on public perceptions of science. From this work, what findings have been the most unexpected or illuminating, and how might they guide efforts to strengthen science policy and build public trust?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because when we first did this survey of 14 countries, 1,000 respondents per country, really the results to me were jaw-dropping. 4 out of 10 surveyed said if science did not exist, their lives would be no different. 4 out of 10 in the globe, around the globe. 32% of the people call themselves science skeptics, but in this population, 6 out of 10, 60% said if science didn't exist, their lives would be no different. Really shocking. Now think about it. They were taking the survey on their laptops and mobile phones. So you see what the problem is. Science is invisible. Science is underappreciated. Science is taken for granted. People don't even realize that their devices and gadgets that they so love are applications of scientific research, decades of scientific research that has afforded them this technology that they love. So that to me was really eye-opening because, to be honest, when you're working in a scientific field and you're using science to solve problems and create your innovative products, you don't really appreciate that the common public is not thinking about science as much as you think they are. And they don't even make the connection that we make. So whose problem is that? It's not the public's issue. If we want to say we're doing science and science is important, it's our responsibility really to bring that to the public. So what I did is when I was given this role of Chief Science Advocate, I was like, okay, the results make it clear we need a simple strategy, A, B, and C. A is for building awareness and appreciation of science and the acknowledgement of science in our everyday lives so we can move people from this apathy that they feel. B is about breaking down barriers and biases and boundaries. We had lots of questions in there, and people were like, well, I'm not a genius, so science is not for me. That's not right, because many people will self-select out of science thinking, oh, they're not, Albert Einstein or something. But that's not just what we need in science. There were also, left brain, right brain. You often hear about things like, oh, I'm a girl, science is not for me, etc., etc. So you have to break down those barriers. And finally, C is for communication, 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 and championing of science with a context that people can see and appreciate, that science can help solve problems and scientists can help improve lives. I think that is so important. So, this simple ABC strategy is all I did for my role as chief science advocate because honestly, this role does not exist anywhere. There's no company that has this role for advocating for science. So I had to pave the way, and it made the most sense to me. And it was very interesting. This all started, our survey started before COVID. But during COVID, it was interesting that skepticism went down. People were like, yeah, science, because they saw what science can deliver in the gift of the vaccine. And people realized that the impact is more visible and directly relevant. But I have to say, over the years, we have kept up with the survey, and skepticism is creeping back up because it's always like, what have you done for me lately? Which really tells me that we have to consistently keep science in the forefront and make sure the public understands that every day it is helping us and it can solve problems not just for today, but the challenges we face for tomorrow.
That was truly insightful, the way you've broken down the ABC strategy: awareness, breaking barriers, and communication. Show just how intentional and creative you've been in making science more accessible and relatable to the public. It's clear that advocacy has become as much a part of your mission and innovation itself. One way you extended this mission is through your writing. You are the author of the Heart of Science book series, with all proceeds dedicated to scholarship for underrepresented women in STEAM. What inspired you to embark on this project, and how does the act of writing connect with your broader advocacy for science?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't the child who tinkered or tore apart their toys. That classic, oh my gosh, that kid is an engineer. I was not that. I was more interested in the human context, and I'll talk a lot about this in my TEDx talk also. I just didn't see the connection of what I cared about with STEM fields. I still ended up there because of my parents, and I was fortunate at the end of the day. I ended up at 3M, and the culture of empowerment, the emphasis on collaboration, and the context of improving lives, that it was really a perfect fit for me. But for someone, a kid who started out thinking they're not the science type, I'm currently at the highest level you can attain as a scientist at 3M. I've been inducted into the 3M Hall of Fame. I'm the first woman engineer to reach this level. I have 80 patents to my name. In 2020, I was honored to receive the highest achievement award by the Society of Women Engineers. And a reason why I drag people through my story is not that I want to brag, but I want you to think about what I think about each and every day. How many students, how many scientists, how many ideas, how many innovations, how many leaders, how many legends are we all missing out on because of how we teach, how we train, how we track, how we typify, and how we even talk about STEM? There is a lot we can talk about, which is going to inspire so many more people. People like the kid I was. I ended up in science for completely different reasons because of my parents. I would have stepped away because I didn't see that connection. And there's a lot of research on positive impact of role models and the negative impact of stereotypes. And so one of the projects that we did, which I'm really proud of, is a docuseries that we created. It's called Not the Science Type. And it portrays the story of people who have done really well in science for women. In fact, behind me is the poster from that movie. And we want to normalize the strong participation of women in STEM fields. Don't let pervasive stereotypes about what science is, what scientists do, who enters, who persists, and who excels in STEM deter you. Science needs you, and science needs you to be you. So bring yourself, bring your capabilities, all of that. And that's really the kind of idea I wanted to have. So I took all the essays that I write, and I approached Society of Women Engineers during COVID time. It was just a time of a lot of thinking because of everything that was going on in the world. And I thought, I want to be productive with purpose. So what if we take all the essays, put them in a book, and then Society of Women Engineer publishes it, and all proceeds can then do a scholarship for women in STEM so we can create more scholars. And we got the first book out, and then I got to meet the first scholar. And truly, it was a life-changing experience. And I simply say that because we go through our lives thinking that one person cannot make a difference. At that moment, I realized one person can make a difference because you do something, others join in. I wrote the book, others joined in. They bought the books. We had enough money to sponsor a scholar, and it changed their lives. And so when I was coming back on my flight, I was like, I got to write another one. So I wrote the second book. And then after the second book was out, people started asking about, worksheets and book clubs and all of these things based on the frameworks I have. So then I decided to write the third one. And the third one is really a workbook. You can probably see all books behind me. And now we have 5 scholars supported from the sales of the first 2. And the third one we'll find out soon as the school year starts, who gets the scholarship. So it's very exciting. And so the first book is called Engineering Footprints, Fingerprints, and Imprints, and it lays the foundation and explores, overarching themes of personal development, authentic leadership, how to make a meaningful impact. Engineering Fine Print takes us deeper. So now I'm encouraging us to examine the fine print. Fine is feelings, identities, needs, and experiences. I love acronyms. So you can use that as catalyst for purposeful action and self-realization. And in the third book, we take insights and strategies, including all of those in the first 2, and then put them into practice. So it's a hands-on guide. You have suggested reflections, suggested actions, and you can construct like a personalized blueprint for success step by step with a profound journey of really self-discovery and growth, because there are mental models and frameworks for all sorts of skills, like storytelling. How do I come up with ideas? How do I do personal branding? All of these have been very important in my career journey. And I've just tried to boil it down to the basics, make them memorable, weave in my own experiences, and focus on some key concepts and contexts that I think are essential really for personal and professional development in today's world. So they give a tangible blueprint for a joyful and a purposeful STEM journey. So I'm glad you asked that question. In fact, I think in the show notes we can add links so that people can actually go by. And remember, it's not just what you take away from these books, it's also what you give back. You are giving the gift of education. And that's truly the best gift you can ever give.
What a powerful story. The way your books not only share insights but also directly support scholarship is such a meaningful example of turning words into action, of combining advocacy with tangible impact. And as you said, it proves that one person truly can make a difference while also inspiring others to join in. Building on that, I'd like to turn on the theme of leadership. For women aspiring to leadership position in academia, industry, or policy, what leadership principles, decision-making frameworks, or core competency do you see as most essential for creating lasting influence and impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'm not an expert in any way. And honestly, my leadership journey has been about leading from my own rung of the ladder, which means, I'm not leading from some high place up top. I don't have a ton of direct reports and businesses to manage and all that. I'm largely an individual contributor. But I still think I can provide some perspective on these topics. And so many of the frameworks in my book are about leadership. And I think an important one for women, I think, is on finding your voice. I've written about my philosophy on mentoring, on building a personal brand, becoming a thought leader, but I keep coming back to like really finding your voice because that's so pivotal. And the framework that I used there is actually called Training Your Adult Voice. And this is funny because people will be like, I'm an adult, so I have a good voice. I know what I need and all of that. I think this is one of those things that is less about talent and more about skills. But as adults, sometimes we feel that we should know what our voice already is. But adults are oftentimes those who need to reconnect with their voice. Children are more adept at using their voice. They say what they feel and they don't have to sort of think about it. Our voice as adults actually gets dimmer and duller as we grow older because all the world is acting on us. So, what I want people to do is to dig deep and find their voice. And in this framework, adult, A is for access. Access your voice through self reflection. What is the message you want to bring to the world? D is for develop. Strengthen your voice through research and self education. U is for use. Practice your voice in low stakes environment first. Start small, but start using your voice. And then I say lend. L is for lend. Amplify your voice by sharing it with broader audiences. And T is for transcend. You'll see that your voice will evolve to becoming a source of inspiration for others. And that's the real adult journey. And that is kind of what I had to use myself when I had to take on this additional role of chief science advocate for 3M. I could say the things people say, like, oh, well, I always wanted to be a scientist, but that's not true. What is my real voice? My real voice was I didn't want to be in science because I didn't think it related to what I wanted to do. So I had to access my own voice. So I'm not saying that I knew the answers. I myself had to go through this journey of ADULT, finding my adult voice when I got this role of chief science advocate. So access is about listening, develop is about learning, use is about leading, lending is about liberating your voice, and transcend is when it becomes part of your legacy. And I feel fortunate to experience this journey of listen, learn, lead, liberate ideas, and let them become part of the legacy. I've seen the power of your own empowerment and how you can get tremendous support for your ideas if you find your voice. You grow, your voice grows, you can influence people, you can change minds, you can light a fire in others. And these are just small steps that can snowball and they create a cycle of positive change. So I think in many ways there has never been a better time than now to bring up rational, feasible, creative, and innovative ideas that can impact organizations positively, be it the cultures we cultivate, the way we work, or the purpose we pursue. It's so important to find your voice.
It's fascinating how finding your voice can transform not just your own path, but also the people and ideas around you. In a similar way, you have reconceptualized STEAM, focusing on skills, talent, expertise, and mindset rather than just traditional discipline. How does this expanded framework influence the way we approach education, develop our workforce, and build innovative ecosystems?
Yeah, you see what I did there? Rather than traditional disciplines, I'm shifting the focus to concrete human capabilities. So I say it's about skill, talent, expertise, and mindset, STEM. I honestly feel that can make STEM fields more accessible. So instead of conventional understanding of STEM as simply science, technology, engineering, and math, these are abstract disciplines and they can seem disconnected from everyday life. We see the data, right? Where people are like, well, if science didn't exist, my life would be no different, right? So, reconceptualizing that, one can envision even in education, you're emphasizing not just the content is important, but also context based learning that connects technical information to real world applications and societal impact. I wanted to solve problems. I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted to help people. But the way STEM was portrayed, these aspects weren't talked about. Now, if I highlight the practical application and human impact, it makes STEM education more engaging for some people, more relevant for some people, and particularly for students who are motivated by communal and societal impact goals. So it can also, challenge stereotypes about who belongs in STEM fields. And that's what we showed in the 3M docuseries that I just talked about, not the science type, that it doesn't matter what your race, gender, ethnicity, who you are, everyone can be the science type. And this sort of inclusive vision can help students see themselves as potential contributors to the STEM community regardless of what their background or identity is, because you're focusing on skills, talents, expertise, and mindset, not conformity to some traditional expectations. And this allows space for role models who will approach STEM from different perspectives. And so it is also interdisciplinary. I like to quote Da Vinci. I think it's often attributed to him, study the science of art, study the art of science, develop your senses, learn how to see, and realize that everything connects to everything else. And that's why I also like that STEM that I talked about, science, humanities, technology, engineering, and math, because it enriches STEM education. And I also think it emphasizes experiential learning, practical skills through hands-on engagement. I mean, I'm involved in programs like First Robotics, 3M's science training encouragement programs, you know, a lot of things that 3M does, which places students in labs alongside scientists. And that is not just about the knowledge, it's also about skills, talent, expertise, and mindset that are integral to this sort of reconceptualization. And then it also has implications for workforce development. You are trying to create a robust pipeline of STEM careers. So you're also focusing on capabilities, not just traditional credentials. And this opens up for many people who may have relevant skills, talents, and mindset coming through non traditional routes. So skill based hiring is also important this way. And I always say what really helps define someone's success in any field, it's not just talent, but also tenacity. It's not just intellect, but also initiative. It's not just curiosity, but also creativity. And it's not just knowledge, but know how. So I think this expanded, reconceptualized belief that I have, focus on all this enhances innovation ecosystem by bringing in different perspectives, and that is also important for innovation. So it shifts from these abstract fields to a more real world approach in my mind. And I should also mention, I like to say sometimes the right attitude can transform STEM into STEAM. A is for attitude. So a steam engine that can, do anything.
It's inspiring to hear how you've broadened STEAM into a framework centered on skills, talent, expertise, and mindset, making it more accessible, inclusive, and connected to real-world impact. Building on that, I'm curious about your experience with women specifically in STEAM. In your keynote addresses at global forums like TED and Tech and Women, what recurrent challenges and shared aspirations have you observed among women across different cultural and economic contexts?
Yeah, I think we have talked about it a little bit. Recurring challenges are typically related to numerical underrepresentation in certain fields and stereotypes. I mean, those two would be the two big ones, I would say. And it differs slightly in different cultural and economic contexts. The stereotype of who's the science type, it might be stronger in some part of the world. But these stereotypes create these psychological barriers that discourage girls and women from pursuing certain careers, regardless of their actual abilities or interests, right? And lack of visible role models in specific STEM fields, that also creates a significant barrier, and that transcends cultural and economic boundaries. When women don't see others like themselves succeeding in these fields, they may question whether they belong or whether they can succeed. We also talked about what I personally felt, which also actually has a word associated with it called goal incongruity. Many women and girls are motivated by these goals of wanting to help people, wanting to improve lives, and they struggle to see how STEM careers connect to that. So that is goal incongruity. So we have to create this congruity with their goals and describe STEM in different ways. There's systemic barriers, I would say, in environments that have been designed primarily for men. Women will have to navigate, many things that were not designed for them, and they also have to navigate it while being few. So there's the onlyness also. And these manifest themselves differently in different cultural contexts around the globe, but they create additional hurdles that women have to overcome. And I think for professional women, there can be multiple additional barriers. Sometimes it is explicit discrimination, sometimes it is implicit bias. Biases can impact hiring, they can impact promotion, they can impact recognition, they can impact day-to-day interactions. It just creates cumulative disadvantages. So it is essentially a multifaceted issue. and it involves multiple stakeholders across the spectrum. It's parents, it's teachers, it's educators, it's mentors, it's peers, it's employers. And there's a strong role of family and school and community and society and culture. And so, what this means is, in order to address these challenges, it requires coordinated efforts across multiple domains. And if you identify these barriers and you leverage the aspirations that women have, we can address them to create like a more impactful STEM worldwide.
Those perspectives really underscore how much thought and collaboration are needed to build a more inclusive and effective STEAM ecosystem. Now, as we move to the next segment of our conversation on the future of innovation and interdisciplinary research, I would like to turn to the broader landscape of emerging technologies. In the era shaped by breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, advanced materials, and synthetic biology, what ethical frameworks and government models should guide innovation to ensure equity, safety, and societal benefit?
Oh, wow. I'm certainly not an expert in any of this, and I've had virtually no experience in developing, governance frameworks or policies, but I can give you my perspective, if that's okay. I think innovation is ideas that have impact. Innovation is ideas that have impact. The word innovation has been used, misused, overused, that sometimes it loses its meaning. I think right now, and I've shared this externally many times, I think that there are three C's of sustainable innovation. The first one is constraints. And I feel rather than viewing ethical and regulatory constraints as limitations, we should reframe them as a catalyst for creativity and a catalyst for setting our direction. So I'll give you an example. We have a sustainability value commitment at 3M, which means every product needs to have this value commitment. Instead of saying, oh my God, it has to have value commitment, we say, how can this constraint drive our creativity and foster partnerships? And that way we can change, still do what we want to do, but with freedom to innovate underneath this constraint. Now, if you have constraints, that means the field is really narrow because you've got these constraints. What that should force you to do is to get much deeper understanding of the context, which is the second C that I think is very important. So after constraints, it's the context. And this means you have to get multitude of perspectives, full range of potential impact, social, environmental, economic. And if you enrich the context within this given constraints, you can better anticipate consequences, better design solutions that address real need. So it's so important when we are driven by constraints to know the context. And the final one is commitment. Constraints can provide the structure, and, we can look at the context, but really, what to empower people, we need to have commitment. And the commitment needs to be palpable at all levels of the organization. This is what allows people to step outside of neat little boxes and actually do what is required to bring innovation to life. It doesn't happen in a ordinary way. That's just ordinary work. When you're doing innovation, you have to step outside of certain boundaries. And I think commitment helps you drive boundaryless behavior. So those three C's is how I think about innovation frameworks, guidelines for all of the things we need to do. Look at the constraints, and they give you the boundary conditions. Look at the context, and that should allow the out-of-box thinking. And the commitment allows you to step outside of neat little boxes and really commit to this objective. And so those are the three that I think are important. And I do know that bringing artificial intelligence into all of this now, that further compounds everything. But what I have said, and I am actually leading one of the use cases for AI and R&D, and what I tell people is think about it as artificial diligence. There's a lot of work that you need to do, repeat, 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 and do it, and you don't have the diligence to do it. It can do it for you. It's not intelligent, but it is diligent. It'll take on all those tedious tasks, activity, work that you just couldn't do. It'll take that on. But that's all it is. It's artificial diligence. And why do I say that? It can compute consistently, but it has no conscious contemplation. It can accelerate information, but it doesn't have any authentic insights of its own. It can learn logic, but it has no lived experience that you have had as a human. It can leverage innovation, but it does not link human intuition to human imagination. That's what humans can do with their real intelligence. So please don't give it more credit than it deserves yet, right now. It is just artificial diligence. And I've created this radio matrix, I call it real, artificial, diligent, intelligent. How do you operate in this 4-quadrant framework? So the authentic quad to me is where real intelligence and real human diligence come together. This is where you have the purely human capabilities that combine our natural intelligence with our perseverance, artistic creation, scientific breakthroughs, intrinsic motivation, compassionate care, ethical reasoning. These need to be really protected, and we need to persist on those because that is truly what makes us human. Then we can have the assisted quad where we are using artificial intelligence with our real diligence. These are systems that are guided by human effort, but they give you the computational power, the pattern recognition capabilities. So it recognizes the importance of human guidance in ensuring that the AI system is operating responsibly. Then you have the augmented quad, which is the real intelligence with the artificial diligence. Here, human intelligence can be enhanced by the machine persistence and automation. So this highlights the potential for the collaboration to achieve outcomes that neither could accomplish alone. And then finally, the autonomic quad is where it's artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence. So this is where it's self-operating systems. They can do well-defined tasks. They don't need human intervention. They are operating, though, within carefully established parameters and just running autonomously. And so this emphasizes the importance of establishing appropriate boundaries and letting the system do what the system does. And the point is that it isn't about choosing one quadrant over the other, but recognizing the distinct contribution of both human and machine capabilities to achieve optimal outcomes. So it uses everything. And that, to me, can give some sort of a holistic approach to how we do this, ensuring human values, ensuring participation, addressing risks, and focusing on meaningful problems. So those two, I think, would be frameworks that would be helpful, perhaps, from a practical standpoint for navigating this complex area with emerging fields of artificial intelligence and advanced materials, synthetic biology, and whatnot.
Thank you for breaking down such a thoughtful framework, the 3 C's of innovation, and your real artificial, diligent, intelligent quadrants really highlights how human creativity, diligence, and ethical reasoning work hand in hand with emerging technologies. Looking at the bigger picture, emerging economies are playing an increasingly significant role in shaping science and technology worldwide. Over the next 2 decades, which areas of research and technology do you think will have the biggest impact on society? And what strategies should this region use to maximize their contributions? And how can global science prizes like the VinFuture Prize help drive breakthroughs and speed up progress in these critical areas?
Yeah, I mean, emerging economies are vital contributors, right, to the global science and technology landscape, bringing unique perspective, innovative approaches to addressing worldwide challenges, and the VinFuture Prize. These areas are shaped by my own sort of global background, my participation in the pre-screening committees. I truly believe in emerging economies can be innovation hubs because they're increasingly focused on now becoming creators rather than just consumers of science and technology. And this represents a shift, that countries that might have been on the periphery of scientific advancement can make substantial contributions now to solving global problems. And of course, there are unique challenges that scientists in these developing regions face. They may have heavier teaching loads. It can limit can limit their research capacity. Of course, always financial constraints that can impact access to resources and opportunities. But despite that, we see tremendous potential, and particularly when there are collaboration that can connect scientists from emerging economies to the global community. So science is fundamentally a global endeavor. So it's good to think about science that way, not bound by borders, And no matter where our fellow scientists are and what language they speak, we all speak the language of science, and scientific progress benefits from all these contributions. In fact, the constraints in my 3 C's of sustainable innovation is something that can really be relevant for emerging economies, understanding the constraints, enriching the context, and demonstrating commitment. To your question about transformative technologies, I think we already talked about things like AI. But AI in the service of sustainable technologies for climate-related challenges, that's a critical area of opportunities. Healthcare innovation that improve access to quality care, digital technologies that can bridge, access gaps and create economic opportunities for emerging economies. Food systems, agriculture, enhanced productivity, energy solutions. That's a big one. Energy solutions. So I think all of those, and if the emerging economies are investing in, education, fostering collaboration, developing supportive policies, addressing local challenges, bringing in the public is so important, then they can maximize their contributions. And really, global science prizes like VinFuture Prize serve as catalysts for that innovation, because they're recognizing excellence, they're providing resources, they're highlighting collaborative efforts, they're ensuring inclusivity, they're inspiring the next generation. So you ultimately accelerate the progress on the most pressing challenges. And honestly, the impact of the Global Prize extends beyond just the innovations they recognize. It not only recognizes innovations, but they also benefit. Vietnam positions it as a global hub for cutting edge technology. And it demonstrates how these prizes can actually help emerging economies establish themselves as significant contributors to the global scientific community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seth, for sharing your insights, experiences, and inspiring vision with us today. Your perspective on science, innovation, and leadership have been both enlightening and thought-provoking. As we wrap up today's conversation, one message shines through. Science is not only about discovery, but also about responsibility. The responsibility to apply knowledge in ways that uplift humanity, foster inclusivity, and create meaningful opportunities for all. On behalf of the Unveil Future team, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Jayshree Seth for joining us and for her unwavering commitment to advancing the mission of Science for Humanity. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We also would like to share that the VinFuture Foundation is now accepting nomination for the 2026 VinFuture Prize, open until April 17, 2026. You can find more details at the link below. Stay tuned for the next episode of Season 3, where we continue exploring the breakthroughs, the people, and the ideas shaping a better future for all.